Nurse Camille Warren was still wearing blood on the sleeve of her scrubs when the millionaire's daughter pointed at her in the hospital corridor and said, "She killed my father." The words landed harder than the code alarm had. Harder than the doctor shouting for epinephrine. Harder than the flatline that followed. For 1 second, the entire VIP wing of St. Bartholomew Medical Center went silent. Then everyone turned toward Camille. Doctors. Nurses. Security guards. The millionaire's family. Hospital executives in expensive suits who had somehow arrived faster than the chaplain. Camille stood outside room 712 with her hands at her sides, her navy scrubs wrinkled from a 12-hour shift that had become 16, her hair pulled back tight, her face exhausted but composed in the way black women in hospitals learn to be composed before anyone gives them a reason. Inside the room, Richard Ellison was dead. 74 years old. Real estate billionaire. Hospital donor. Owner of 3 towers downtown, 2 private clubs, a foundation named after his late wife, and enough influence to make administrators speak softly when his family entered a room. For most of the city, he had been a legend. For St. Bartholomew, he had been a benefactor. For Camille, he had been a patient. A difficult patient, but still a patient. And 20 minutes after his death, his daughter decided someone had to be punished before anyone understood what had happened. Monica Ellison stood in front of Camille wearing a cream designer coat over a black dress, diamond earrings trembling as her hands shook with rage. Her brother, Preston Ellison, stood behind her, pale and silent. Their family attorney whispered urgently near the elevators. A hospital board member named Dr. Gerald Voss kept glancing toward the reporters gathering downstairs, as if scandal already had footsteps. Monica took 1 step closer. "My father was stable when I left," she said. "Stable. Then this woman goes into his room, and now he's dead." Camille looked at her. "I'm sorry for your loss, Ms. Ellison." "Don't you dare." Camille did not flinch. "I did everything ordered by the attending physician." "You were alone with him." "For less than 4 minutes." "You touched his 4. I checked the line because the pump alarmed." "You changed something." "I did not." Monica's voice rose. "You expect us to believe that?" The hallway filled with tension. Camille knew that tone. Not grief. Not only grief. Accusation sharpened by privilege. The kind that did not need evidence yet, because the person speaking had lived too long in rooms where suspicion became fact if delivered confidently enough. Dr. Gerald Voss stepped forward then, wearing concern like a mask. "Let's all take a breath," he said. He was the hospital's chief medical officer, a handsome white man in his early 60s with silver hair, polished glasses, and a reputation for protecting donors with one hand and hospital liability with the other. He turned toward Camille. "Nurse Warren, why don't you step away from the floor for now?" Camille looked at him. "Am I being suspended?" "Administrative leave pending review." "That is not an answer." His smile tightened. "It is standard procedure." "Then please state it clearly." Monica scoffed. "Listen to her. My father is dead and she's worried about procedure." Camille looked at Monica again. "No, ma'am. I'm worried about truth. Procedure is how we keep people from burying it." That sentence changed the air. Dr. Voss's eyes hardened. "Nurse Warren," he said quietly, "you need to be very careful." Camille held his gaze. "I have been careful all night." 2 security officers approached, embarrassed but obedient. Camille removed her badge, placed it on the nurse station counter, and walked away from the VIP wing while whispers followed her down the hall. By midnight, the story had already begun changing shape. By sunrise, it had found headlines. Billionaire dies suddenly in VIP hospital suite. Family questions care after death of Richard Ellison. Nurse placed on leave after medical emergency. By noon, a local television station used Camille's employee photo without permission. A smiling headshot from 3 years earlier became the face of suspicion. Black nurse. Millionaire dead. VIP wing. Family demands answers. Camille sat at her kitchen table watching the broadcast with the volume muted. Her mother, Dolores, sat beside her, holding a mug of tea she had not touched. Dolores Warren had worked 35 years as a school secretary and had raised Camille alone after Camille's father died in a warehouse accident. She had seen enough of the world to understand what happened when a black woman became useful as a villain. "They're going to try to make this easy," Dolores said. Camille did not look away from the television. "I know. You need a lawyer. I called one." "Who?" "Naomi Bell." Dolores finally took a sip of tea. "Good. Somebody needs to scare them properly." Camille almost smiled. Then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She did not answer. It was the 43rd call that morning. Some reporters. Some hospital staff. Some strangers telling her she should be ashamed. Others using words her mother had taught her not to repeat inside a kitchen. Camille turned the phone face down. She had been a nurse for 19 years. Not because nursing was noble in the abstract. Because when she was 14, her father died in a hospital hallway after waiting 3 hours for a specialist no one called twice. Camille remembered her mother begging a nurse for help. She remembered the nurse, a black woman named Mrs. Renee, kneeling in front of her and saying, "Baby, look at me. Breathe with me. Your mama needs you standing." Camille never forgot her. She became a nurse because she knew skill mattered. But she stayed a nurse because she knew presence mattered too. She had cared for premature babies, gunshot victims, grandmothers with dementia, teenagers after overdoses, CEOs after heart attacks, construction workers after falls, women whose husbands did not visit, men whose children came only when inheritance became a question. She had held hands no one else wanted to hold. She had cleaned bodies after families left. She had taken blame from people who saw scrubs but not humanity. She knew hospitals. She knew hierarchy. And she knew St. Bartholomew's VIP wing had secrets. Richard Ellison's death was not the first strange thing she had seen there. It was just the first that powerful people needed explained quickly. 3 weeks earlier, Camille had noticed medication discrepancies in the VIP medication room. Controlled substances signed out at odd times. Chart notes entered late. Medication waste records missing signatures. She reported it quietly to the nursing supervisor. Nothing happened. Then a patient in room 705 became dangerously sedated after a pain medication dose no nurse remembered giving. Camille filed an incident report. It disappeared from the system. She filed again. Dr. Voss called her into his office. He smiled politely and told her she was becoming anxious about ordinary documentation issues. Camille asked for pharmacy review. He said, "Nurse Warren, you have a strong reputation. Don't damage it by seeing conspiracies in clerical errors." That was when she knew. People only used the word conspiracy when they wanted curiosity to sound crazy. 2 nights before Richard Ellison died, Camille saw a man in a gray suit leaving the VIP medication room. He was not a doctor. Not a nurse. Not pharmacy. When she questioned him, he smiled and said he was with administration. She asked for his badge. He walked away. She reported that too. No response. Now Richard Ellison was dead, and she was being blamed for touching in 4 pump. At 3:12 p.m., Naomi Bell arrived at Camille's apartment. She wore a black coat, carried a leather bag, and looked at the television once before saying, "Turn that off before it lowers the IQ of the room." Dolores nodded approvingly. Naomi sat at the kitchen table and opened her notebook. "Tell me everything from the beginning." Camille did. Not dramatically. Precisely. The medication discrepancies. The missing incident reports. The man in the gray suit. Richard Ellison's condition. The doctor's orders. The pump alarm. The 4 minutes in the room. The code. Monica's accusation. Dr. Voss placing her on leave. Naomi wrote without interruption. When Camille finished, Naomi tapped her pen once. Do you know if the VIP wing has security cameras? Yes. Hallway, elevators, medication room entrance, nurse station, supply corridor. Inside patient rooms? No. Privacy. Who controls the footage? Hospital security. Who oversees hospital security? Camille's mouth tightened. Administration. Meaning Voss can influence access. Yes. Naomi closed the notebook. Then we move fast. By 5 o'clock, Naomi had sent preservation demands to the hospital board, the security contractor, the electronic medical records vendor, and the pharmacy system administrator. She demanded all footage, access logs, medication cabinet records, badge swipes, deleted incident reports, internal communications, and all documents related to Camille's leave. By 6, St. Bartholomew's legal department called. By 6:10, Naomi put them on speaker and used a tone that made Dolores whisper, "Lord have mercy," with admiration. The hospital's attorney said, "We are still gathering facts." Naomi said, "Facts are not berries. Preserve the footage." The attorney said the hospital had no intention of destroying evidence. Naomi said, "Good. Then your intention and my written demand can be friends." By morning, the hospital released a statement. St. Bartholomew Medical Center is cooperating fully with the Ellison family and conducting an internal review. The nurse involved has been placed on administrative leave in accordance with protocol. The nurse involved. Not Nurse Warren. Not longtime employee. Not caregiver. A category. A container for blame. Monica Ellison gave an interview that evening outside her father's mansion. "My father deserved better," she said through tears. "No family should have to wonder whether negligence or worse took someone they loved." Negligence or worse. That phrase went everywhere. Camille's face appeared again on television. Her neighbors stopped making eye contact. A woman at the grocery store recognized her and moved to another checkout line. Her landlord called to ask whether the reporters outside were going to become a continuing situation. Camille stopped sleeping. But she did not break. That disappointed people. Those who wanted guilt wanted her frantic. Those who wanted innocence wanted her publicly weeping. Camille gave neither performance. She sat with Naomi. She gathered documents. She wrote a timeline. She called 3 nurses from the VIP wing who had seen pieces of the same pattern. 2 were too afraid to speak. 1 agreed to meet. His name was Luis Ramirez, a night nurse with 12 years at St. Bartholomew and 2 children in private school he could barely afford. He met Camille and Naomi in the back booth of a quiet coffee shop. Luis looked like a man who had already imagined losing his job. "I saw him," he said. "The man in the gray suit?" Naomi asked. Luis nodded. "Twice. Medication room hallway. Once with Dr. Voss." Camille leaned forward. "When?" "2 nights before Ellison died. And again the night Ellison died." Camille went still. "What time?" Luis swallowed. "About 10:40. Richard Ellison coded at 11:08. Luis continued. "I checked the medication room logs later. Nothing matched. Then I checked badge access because the door didn't show a nurse entry around that time." Naomi's eyes sharpened. You have access to badge logs? Not officially. But charge nurses can see limited door activity when a badge malfunctions. What did you see? Luis looked at Camille. The door opened with an administrative override. Naomi said, "Can you prove that?" Luis slid a folded paper across the table. "I printed it before the log disappeared." Camille stared at him. "Luis." "I know," he said. "You could lose your job." He looked tired. "Camille, they're trying to end your life. A job isn't worth that much." Naomi took the paper carefully. "You understand this may become evidence?" Luis nodded. "I do." 3 days later, the first crack appeared. Naomi obtained confirmation from the security contractor that, contrary to what the hospital initially implied, VIP wing footage was stored redundantly for 30 days on an external server before being overwritten. Hospital administration could request clips, but could not fully delete the backup without contractor authorization. That mattered. Because Street Bartholomew told Naomi the footage from the medication room hallway was under review. Then temporarily unavailable. Then corrupted. Naomi smiled when she heard the word. Corrupted footage, like corrupted people, usually tells you where to look. She filed an emergency motion seeking preservation and independent access to the footage. Monica Ellison's attorneys filed their own motion, expecting it would support their case against Camille. The judge granted review. A hearing was scheduled for Friday. The courtroom filled early. Camille arrived in a dark suit borrowed from her cousin because most of her formal clothes were church dresses, and she refused to sit in court looking like the hospital's idea of a guilty nurse. Naomi sat beside her. Luis sat in the back row, sweating through his collar. 3 reporters waited near the wall. Across the aisle sat Monica Ellison, Preston Ellison, their attorneys, and Dr. Gerald Voss. Dr. Voss looked calm. Too calm. People who lie badly avoid court. People who lie professionally come prepared. The hospital attorney argued that internal review was ongoing and public release of footage would violate privacy and operational security. Monica's attorney argued the family had a right to answers. Naomi argued that everyone seemed deeply committed to answers except when those answers required evidence. The judge, a woman named Helena Morris, listened for 20 minutes before saying, "I will review the relevant security footage and camera first, then determine scope of release." They waited. 37 minutes. Camille sat with her hands folded. Naomi whispered, "Breathe." "I am." "No, you are performing breathing. Try actually doing it." Camille exhaled. Finally, the judge returned. Her face had changed. Not dramatically. But enough. She looked at the hospital attorney first. "Counsel, why was this court told the footage was unavailable?" The attorney stood slowly. "Your Honor, my understanding was, I did not ask what you understood. I asked why the footage was described as unavailable when the external backup is clear, timestamped, and complete." Dr. Voss shifted. Naomi did not move. Judge Morris looked toward the clerk. "We will play a limited segment in open court. No patient interior footage is involved. The footage covers the 7th floor VIP corridor, medication room entrance, and nurse station between 10:35 p.m. and 11:10 p.m. A screen lowered. The room went silent. The footage began. Black and white. No sound. 10:37 p.m. Camille at the nurse station, entering chart notes. 10:41 p.m. Richard Ellison's private physician leaving room 712. 10:43 p.m. Dr. Gerald Voss entering the VIP corridor with a man in a gray suit. Camille's breath caught. Monica leaned forward. 10:44 p.m. The man in the gray suit used something at the medication room door. Not a nurse badge. The door opened. Administrative override. Dr. Voss stood nearby, checking the hallway. 10:46 p.m. The man exited holding a small clear medication bag and something that looked like a syringe case. 10:48 p.m. Dr. Voss entered room 712. No nurse with him. 10:52 p.m. Dr. Voss exited. 10:53 p.m. The man in the gray suit left through the service elevator. 10:56 p.m. The 4-pump alarm light outside room 712 began flashing. 10:57 p.m. Camille looked up from the nurse station, stood, and walked into the room. 11:01 p.m. Camille exited quickly, calling for assistance. 11:03 p.m. Code team arrived. The footage continued another minute, then stopped. No one spoke. Monica Ellison's face had gone gray. Preston stared at Dr. Voss. Dr. Voss looked straight ahead, but his calm was gone. Naomi stood. Your Honor, the footage clearly shows Nurse Warren did not enter Mr. Ellison's room until after Dr. Voss and an unidentified unauthorized individual accessed medication storage and entered the patient's room. This directly contradicts the narrative used to place blame on my client. The hospital attorney looked physically ill. Judge Morris turned to Dr. Voss. Doctor, I advise you not to speak unless represented by counsel. That sentence was a thunderclap. Monica stood suddenly. Who is that man? She demanded. Dr. Voss did not answer. Who is he? She shouted. The judge struck the bench. Order. But the question had already left the room and entered the world. By evening, the security footage was the only story in Atlanta. Security video contradicts claims against Nurse Billionaire's death. Hospital executive seen entering VIP room before fatal code. Millionaire's family demands answers after footage clears black nurse. Camille watched the footage on television with her mother beside her. This time, Dolores did not tell her to turn it off. She watched every second. Then she said, they knew. Camille nodded. They knew. The man in the gray suit was identified 2 days later as Martin Klein, a private medical consultant with no active hospital privileges. He had previously worked for a boutique concierge medicine group serving ultra-wealthy clients who wanted discreet intervention outside standard hospital protocols. A phrase that sounded expensive enough to hide danger. Investigators learned that Richard Ellison had been preparing to change his estate structure. He planned to remove Dr. Voss from the board of his medical foundation after discovering suspicious consulting payments. He also intended to block a major donation to a new luxury cardiac wing because he believed the project was being used to enrich insiders. Dr. Voss had millions riding on that wing. So did Martin Klein. So did a private development group tied to Preston Ellison. That revelation shattered the family's unity. Monica had blamed Camille because grief needed a target. Preston had stayed silent because he had something to protect. Richard Ellison's death was no longer a question of one nurse and one 4-pump. It became a question of money, medicine, inheritance, and men who thought VIP care meant rules could be bent until they broke a patient. The investigation took months. Autopsy review revealed an unauthorized medication combination that likely triggered a fatal cardiac reaction. Electronic records had been altered after the code. Medication cabinet logs were manually adjusted. Camille's incident reports had been deleted by an administrator using Dr. Voss's credentials. Dr. Voss resigned before he was arrested. Martin Klein tried to leave the country and was stopped at the airport. Preston Ellison's role became complicated. He denied involvement in his father's death but admitted knowledge of pressure around foundation decisions. His emails revealed he had complained that his father was blocking necessary transitions and listening to the wrong people. That was enough to make him poisonous in his own circles. Monica Ellison disappeared from public view for 6 weeks. Then she requested a meeting with Camille.
Naomi said, absolutely not.
Camille said, yes.
Naomi stared at her.
I heard the words, but I'm choosing to believe you suffered temporary moral dizziness.
Camille smiled faintly.
She accused me in public. I want to hear what she says in private.
She may bring cameras.
Then don't let her.
Naomi arranged the meeting in her office.
Monica arrived without makeup, without cameras, without the cream coat. She looked older than she had in the hallway outside room 712. Grief had stripped the polish from her face. Camille sat across from her.
Naomi sat nearby, silent but ready to become a legal weapon if needed.
Monica folded her hands.
I was wrong. Camille said nothing. Monica's voice shook. I blamed you because you were there. Because you were the person I could see.
Because Dr. Voss spoke like he was in control, and you looked.
She stopped. Camille waited. Monica swallowed. You looked like someone the hospital would let me blame.
There it was. Ugly. Closer to truth than apology often gets. Camille looked at her for a long moment.
Do you understand what that cost me? I don't think I can fully.
No, Camille said.
You cannot. Monica lowered her eyes. I am publicly retracting everything. I'm giving an interview. I'm naming what I did.
Why? Because my father trusted nurses more than executives, Monica whispered. And I let executives make me suspicious of the nurse who tried to save him.
Camille's face softened, but only slightly. I did try. I know.
No, Camille said, voice tightening for the first time.
You need to understand that.
I did not just happen to be there while your father died. I tried to save him.
I called the code. I checked the line. I started compressions. I stayed after everyone else decided I was convenient. Monica began crying.
Camille did not comfort her. Some tears belong only to the person who caused them.
Finally, Monica said, I'm sorry. Camille nodded once. I hear you.
It was not forgiveness. It was not absolution. It was acknowledgement.
Monica gave the interview 2 days later. She sat under studio lights and said clearly, I falsely accused Nurse Camille Warren in the immediate aftermath of my father's death.
I did that from grief, fear, and trust in the wrong people. But I also did it because I accepted a story that made a black nurse easier to blame than powerful men in suits.
Nurse Warren tried to save my father.
The footage proves that. I was wrong, and my family owes her more than an apology.
The clip went viral.
People praised Monica's courage. Camille turned off the television before the panel discussion began.
Dolores looked at her. You don't want to hear them? No. Why?
Because people love watching powerful people apologize more than they love asking why the lie worked in the first place. That became the sentence Naomi later convinced her to use in a speech. Street Bartholomew offered Camille reinstatement. Quietly at first.
Then publicly after Naomi threatened a lawsuit large enough to require its own zip code. Camille returned under conditions. Written exoneration. Back pay. Damages. Independent audit of VIP medication practices. Whistleblower protections. A nurse-led safety committee with real authority. Mandatory reporting to state regulators. And a memorial patient safety fund in Richard Ellison's name, financed by the Ellison Estate and Hospital Settlement, supporting nurses who report unsafe practices. The board resisted. Naomi enjoyed that part. Eventually, they agreed. Camille walked back into St. Bartholomew 3 months after being escorted out.
This time, staff lined the hallway.
Not officially. No administrator arranged it. Nurses did. Doctors too. Respiratory therapists. Transport workers. Janitors. Pharmacy techs. Unit clerks. People who knew what it meant to be blamed downward when power needed somewhere to put fire. Louise stood near the nurse station. Camille hugged him first. "You saved me," she said. He shook his head. "No. I just printed what they forgot we could see." She laughed, and for the first time in months, it did not hurt. Dr. Voss's office had been emptied. The VIP wing no longer had special medication rules. Martin Klein's access had become part of a criminal investigation. And outside room 712, where Richard Ellison died, a small plaque eventually appeared. Patient safety is not a privilege. It is a promise. Camille did not ask for the plaque. She did not hate it. But she knew promises written on walls mattered only if people were willing to lose money keeping them. A year later, Camille stood at a podium in a packed hospital auditorium during the first Richard Ellison patient safety lecture. Nurses filled the front rows. Administrators sat behind them, where Camille believed they belonged for once. Monica Ellison sat near the aisle, quiet and pale but present. Naomi sat in the back, arms crossed, ready to judge the entire room if necessary. Camille adjusted the microphone. "I have been asked many times what it felt like to be blamed for a millionaire's death," she began. The room went still. The honest answer is this: it felt familiar. No one moved. Not because I had ever been accused of something so terrible before, but because nurses, especially black nurses, know what it means to be visible when blame is needed and invisible when skill is required. We are trusted with bodies, secrets, fear, pain, and final breaths. But when powerful systems fail, they often look for the person with the least protection and call that accountability. She looked across the room. Security footage cleared me. But footage should not have been necessary for people to consider that I might be telling the truth. Monica lowered her head. Camille continued. Patient safety is not created by VIP suites, donor wings, private consultants, or executives who speak in polished language. It is created by people who document accurately, question orders, report danger, protect each other, and refuse to let money bend medicine. Her voice remained steady. I returned to this hospital not because it deserved my labor automatically, but because patients still deserve nurses who have not surrendered their courage. And because the next nurse they try to blame should not have to stand alone. When she finished, the nurses stood first. Then the rest of the room followed. Camille accepted the applause for exactly 5 seconds. Then she stepped away. She had never wanted to be a symbol. Symbols get polished until people forget they were wounded. She wanted policy. Protection. Records. Cameras preserved. Reports that could not disappear. Medication rooms no executive could enter with a private consultant and a smile. She wanted the work to change. Slowly, painfully, imperfectly, it did. Years later, young nurses at St. Bartholomew heard the story during orientation. Some parts became legend. How Nurse Warren stood calm when accused. How Naomi Bell made hospital lawyers sweat through their suits. How the footage revealed Dr. Voss in the hallway. How Monica Ellison had to admit the truth on television. How the VIP wing lost its private rules. Camille always corrected one detail when she taught safety sessions. The footage did not reveal the truth, she would say. The truth was already there. The footage revealed who had been lying about it. That mattered. Because evidence is not magic. It does not create reality. It protects reality from people powerful enough to rewrite it. On the 5th anniversary of Richard Ellison's death, Monica returned to the hospital for a quiet donor meeting connected to the safety fund. She saw Camille in the lobby and approached carefully. Ms. Warren. Ms. Ellison. They were not friends. They were something more complicated. Two women linked by the worst night of one life and the last night of another.
Monica said, the fund approved its 100th nurse protection grant today.
Camille nodded. I heard. My father would have liked that. Camille thought about Richard Ellison. Difficult. Demanding. Scared under the money.
A patient who had asked her the night before he died whether nurses ever got tired of rich people pretending not to be afraid. She had told him, everybody is afraid in a hospital, Mr. Ellison.
Some people just have better sheets. He had laughed. Maybe that was the last honest laugh of his life. Yes, Camille said. I think he would. Monica's eyes softened.
I still wish I had believed you.
Camille looked at her. So do I.
There was no cruelty in it.
Only truth. Monica accepted it. After she left, Camille walked toward the elevators. Her badge opened every door it was supposed to.
Her name had been cleared. Her career had not only survived but become stronger in ways she had not asked for. Still, sometimes when she passed the 7th floor, she remembered the corridor going silent and a grieving daughter's finger pointing at her like a weapon.
She remembered the weight of everyone turning.
She remembered how quickly a lifetime of good work could be made invisible by one accusation in the right mouth.
And she remembered the footage. Black and white. Silent. Unemotional. The hallway telling what people would not. A black nurse was blamed for a millionaire's death.
Then the security footage revealed the truth.
But the deeper truth was this. Camille Warren had been innocent before the camera proved it.
She had been skilled before the hospital admitted it. She had been worthy of belief before power ran out of lies. And when she walked back onto that floor, she did not return as a woman rescued by footage. She returned as a nurse who had survived the machinery of blame and forced the machinery to change.